Hi, I'm Tracy McLaughlin, and we're here today to talk about residential real estate on the Ideal Hour with Simon Katz.
What's up, everybody? This is Simon. Today, I'm super excited to have Tracy McLaughlin, one of the best and most successful real estate agents in the United States, here on my podcast. I've actually known Tracy for a long time. She helped me with a real estate purchase in one of the most expensive towns in the country as well, called Ross. God put us together, and I fell in love with Tracy, her energy, her attitude, and her success. So when I launched this podcast, she was on my list for somebody to come on. And I'm so happy that she said yes. Just to give you a little bit about Tracy, she has transacted with over $4 billion in real estate transactions. She has sold in 2022 over $230 million in sales. She is the real estate agent that real estate agents want to be or inspire to be. And today she's going to share some of her secrets. She's going to discuss her book as well. And we're going to really get to know Tracy a bit more. And I'm so excited. Tracy, welcome on the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Simon. I'm delighted.
I am so excited for you to share your knowledge. We'll talk a little bit about real estate, life, building a business. We're going to discuss a lot of fun things. Personally, I admire you. I want you to know that. I've had quite a few people interested to come on the podcast that I thought were like big names. And when I told Veronica that you're coming on, I was more happy and more excited than you would know. I'm just telling you, I'm a fan. So hopefully you enjoy it as much as I do.
Thank you so much. That's a big compliment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So over the last 2 years, you've sold over $600 million in real estate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's incredible. Okay. I just want you to know that. In 2021, you had about $416 million in sales. And in 2022, you've had $233 million. And I know the reason for that, and it's because of an inventory shortage. So we're going to go into that as well. You're 24th ranked agent out of 2 million, according to your website, in the United States. And you're 8th ranked in California. I bet if we were in Atherton or Hillsborough, you'd be number 1. And you are number 1 ranked in Marin County since 2005, which is my favorite county in the Bay Area.
That's correct. And I agree with you on the favorite county thing.
All right. So I'm highlighting Tracy, and as I should. Okay, so let's talk about how you got started in real estate. Just give me what really motivated you to be part of real estate, or why did you choose this as your career path?
Yeah, it's an interesting story because I really fell into it backwards. I was a television journalist. I had worked as an anchor reporter for NBC affiliates, and then I hosted a television show on travel and skiing. So I was all over the world for 8 years. I was 4 months pregnant with our first child, and my then husband said, there's no way you're going to Russia and filming out of a military helicopter, which is what we were planning on that show. He's like, Tracy, you can't do it. And this Russian had just opened up. I'm like, I have to go to Russia. This is my whole life being a journalist. And he put the kibosh on it, and for, reasons that I believe are probably very justified now. And I said to him, what am I going to do? This is all I know. And he said, look, you're really good at fixing up our house. It was our first house in Tiburon. Why don't we buy that fixer down the street and take a run at you doing a house? And it really kind of emanated out of that. I walked into this home. I had, I don't know why, some savant-like understanding of what to do immediately to a house to make it far more valuable. I'd done it to our home in Tiburon. And we sold that house successfully. Then we did another one. Then we did another one. And before I knew it, I had people calling going, hey, if you're out looking. And I said to Mark, well, this is ridiculous. We're paying an agent a lot of money in commissions. I'll just get a license. And I was even still a little resistant, thinking maybe I'll just crawl back to journalism at some point. I got a license, and then there was just this really kind of meteoric rise in the industry. And there's more behind that as to how I got to be successful. But that's literally that was the catalyst for making a big career transition. So.
Well, and we're definitely going to get into more of that because people always see the success and not the journey to it. So I really want to hear your progression into becoming the top real estate agent that you've become. All right. And what does it mean to you to become a top real estate agent? I mean, some people, when they reach such a status, they maybe take their foot off the gas. They get complacent. They enjoy what they've built. For you to do this for 17 years or so in a row in your county, which is one of the wealthiest in America, that's a big statement. So what does it mean to you to be a top real estate agent, and how do you keep that going?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, when I started out, how am I going to do my first deal as a young agent? You're looking at like calling people for sale by owners, FSBOs, they're referred to in our industry. And I would just sit there and call them and say, hi, you're not really selling your house successfully without an agent. And this is when technology was first coming into real estate. So I sat there and dialed off phone books and knocked on doors. I mean, it was a scrappy beginning. And I remember my then husband, he'd walk in, I'd be like, I've called 25 people today. I mean, it was a real organic, boots on the ground break into the industry. And listen, our industry is dominated by anybody who doesn't know what to do can go get a real estate license. You only have to be 18 years of age, hit a few Anthony's courses. Yeah. And then become 5 people's best friends, and you're their realtor. And so just imagine the numbers involved in this industry and how, how intimidating that can be to people starting out. If all you did was look at data and go, there's 2 million licensed agents there, in Aspen, Colorado, there's 1,500 licensed agents out of 3,000 residents or whatever the percentage is, it could make you stop right there because it already feels like Mount Everest and you haven't even hit like zero elevation, right?
Sure.
So I think you cannot, as someone starting out, you cannot look at those statistics. You cannot think about how unlikely it could be that you would break into the top tier of that. What you have to do every day is just sit down and go, how am I going to make money today? Am I calling 30 people? Am I going to sit in on 2 open homes over the weekend for other people? How can it's just hours and hours of dedication is really what it is. So
incredible.
The beginning of my career was not, we went from being on an anchor desk to sitting and making phone calls to people I didn't ever know. Yeah. But there was something about it that I thought was really interesting. I love the dynamics of the psychology, playing psychologist to people, getting them to trust me even on these preliminary phone calls, and then walking into their home and saying, I actually have something that could be beneficial to you. I don't know how I have this savant-like knowledge, but we went on to do 30 homes for our own portfolio. Wow. And every home that Mark and I flipped was a laboratory for learning. Wow. I would make a mistake and say, damn it, I'm never building a small pantry again. Or damn it, why did that powder room, I should have borrowed the space over here from that closet. You can never, ever get a construction job perfect. AI will. Yeah, sure. AI will design perfect homes. But as human beings, we have a lot of constraints in terms of the dynamics that come together to fully monetize homes that include construction crews, people not showing up for work, which we were talking about earlier. Some delay in a supply chain issue where all of a sudden now 5 things are delayed. The permits are expiring. I mean, it's a complicated business. Yeah. So, but having that development background and having something I could offer to people that was more than, I'm going to put a for sale sign in this yard and I'm, Joe Schmo, great agent number. You have to provide value to people. And that means going out of your way and doing a lot of things a lot of people just actually don't feel like doing.
I love that. It sounds like when you started, first of all, technology is completely different today in real estate than it was back then. Now there's all this analytics, there's Movado, Redfin, et cetera. So all these, you're not only competing with agents, which you mentioned before in Aspen and all over the country, but you're also competing with Redfin trying to sell directly at a much smaller percentage. But what I really love about what you said is you didn't just sit there and make things happen and just wait for things to happen. You made things happen. I know cold calling, and that's not fun or easy, and people will hang up on you. It's very discouraging at times. But to have that personality to be able to keep that customer on the phone and not to mention have them even invite you into their house after that phone call. That's amazing. So good for you. All right. What are the biggest challenges and rewards of your job? What are the biggest challenges and what are the biggest rewards?
Great question. The biggest challenge is, bar none, that is the easiest question I can answer here today, is the obstinance of even the smartest people I know not heeding the advice of me or an excellent real estate agent. It is the genesis of my book that I wrote, Real Estate Rescue. People, because the asset is so emotional, and because people, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing, right? They've lived in their home for 20 years. They hold on to the memories of that chandelier that they bought over in Ireland on their honeymoon. That chandelier still has relevance to them, but not the market. And I have to be the bad guy that walks into that house and says, your house has amazing attributes, but we're going to undersell it if we don't make some changes. Getting people to make changes, if they didn't make them for those 20 years and really understand the fluidity and the dynamics of the market and how the market pays you top dollar to open a design magazine and have your home replicate that design magazine, it's very, very difficult to move, even billionaires off of their own mindset
Crazy.
Of how their home should be presented and, more importantly, how that house should be priced. Crazy. I just took a listing 4 months ago where there was great levels of obstinance on the part of this. He agreed to everything. This is a very prototypical situation in real estate. I'm going to do this. Okay, Tracy, I'm going to sign the agreement at that. You do this, you're going to get me this price. Here's what happens. You get the house looking great, and all of a sudden the seller goes, I've never seen this look better. I'm going to raise the price on that agreement now. Price got raised on the agreement, which disarmed me from getting the multiple offers that I wanted. Then a week later, I'm lucky enough to get one guy that wants to pay $200,000 over the asking price. The seller rejects that, doesn't answer him, and 4 months later, we are $400,000 below what that offer was. He took his mother's, and he's managing it for his mother. He took his mother's money and he has mismanaged that asset into the ground.
Horrible.
I have no control over that.
Yeah.
I cannot, my options are to be fired or go on the ride of watching the asset fall into the ground.
Let me ask you, Tracy, do you think it's more greed or personal kind of attachment to the property or a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both.
Okay.
I think it's a reluctance to understand the dynamics. I have a listing right now, and she started pushing me back. She's a longtime dermatologist in Marin. She started pushing back on some of my recommendations. I put in my email, for 20 years, I listened to your opinion about mole biopsies and all sorts of things. I would never question your interpretation of a biopsy. Please don't question my interpretation of your dining room chandelier.
That is so funny that you mentioned a doctor at this point, because while you were talking, I was thinking you're kind of like, why would you question a specialist or a doctor? Like I do say, I've been doing jiu-jitsu lately. I don't question what the black belt tells me because he has that years of experience in his trade or in his skill. The same way, why would anyone question what you give as advice? And maybe from what I understand, it's because people maybe have had bad past experiences with agents that are just not as honest, not as transparent or ethical. But when you get a good agent such as yourself, I totally see the value of having you lead, because if they don't, as you mentioned, they're going to lose out on money because you just know the market that much more. You breathe it, you wake up to it, you go to sleep with it. And people need to understand that. But that's really cool that you put that analogy of a doctor.
She actually flipped over when I did that and said, we're just going to listen to you. What am I doing?
Yeah.
But Simon, the genesis of that's why Real Estate Rescue was written. Yeah. Our industry, if you think about what we're doing for a living, 40% of America's wealth is tied up in its principal residence. We are people's money managers. We are managing what is likely their biggest asset.
Retirement.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to have any credentials beyond a high school education, graduation from high school. There is no collegiate experience required. There's no checks and balances on anything we write or say to people as a potential client.
Crazy.
You are already emotionally wrapped up in your home, and you're already a little bit emotionally vulnerable because of your attachment to the home. What a perfect setup for me as a non-caring, non-ethical agent to walk into your house and say, Simon, we can get $5 million for it, knowing in my mind that house is worth $4 million. Simon, if I do this, but I don't really have experience at staining hardwood floors or picking out chandeliers, and you go, yeah, she must be able to do that. All of a sudden, you've invested money in the asset. You have been told a price that's preternaturally high for the market because I need the business and I want you to sign that agreement. Nobody's watching this.
And a lot of agents hold you to the agreement for X amount of months, correct? Like,
year. I walked into one house, I wrote about it in my book, where I literally cried when the man told me this story. These were two people. He was a lawyer. He did volunteer work at San Quentin for inmates. They were wonderful, philanthropic. This was their life savings. Their son was going to college. They needed the money. The first agent blew the listing. He spent, I don't even know, $200,000 on stuff that was ridiculous.
Wow.
He had no basis for walking in that home saying, give me your money, let me fix your house up to sell it, overpriced it. And they sat there a year later. I walked out and I wrote in my book, I had tears in my eyes as I left their driveway because of how kind and good these people were and how advantaged they were. And he held them to a year listing agreement. It could have even been longer. I can't remember. And markets can shift very quickly.
Of course.
If you're stuck in a year's agreement and the market flips down by 15 or 20%, not only is the money that you invest in that home lost, so is the market. I've seen markets flip on a dime and people's assets go down.
Just like the interest rates recently.
That's right.
The market's quickly turned. And a lot of people that were either greedy or misled by their real estate agent. Maybe they had an attorney as well, but they couldn't resell their home right after because all of a sudden the mortgage is double or 40% more than you would pay. And that happened just like that. That's pretty interesting. What advice would you give? And you kind of touched on the regulations are kind of lax to become a real estate agent. It seems like, in fact, at one point, I had almost considered doing it, and it's because I was transacting a couple transactions here and there. I'll never do it, so I won't be your competitor, and I don't think I can be anyway if I wanted to.
I'd like to go up against you, Simon.
I would lose. Tracy, your energy is far above mine, and I love that. First of all, I love that about women. I love women that have a lot of energy, that really come in the room, and anytime I've seen you in person, your aura demands this type of respect. I love that about you. And you'd destroy me if I ever was in real estate. So that's one reason I won't. But what advice would you give to someone considering becoming a real estate agent? Like, let's say someone's out there watching, maybe you, and they're like, hey, I want to be a real estate agent. What advice would you give for them to be successful or even give it a shot?
Sure. I mean, I think number one, you have to understand buildings and houses. If you can't, I think getting educated on how places can be immediately more valuable is probably one of the most seminal things someone can do. I've given advice to young people before and said, go work with an interior designer or an architect for 6 months and understand why, if there was a wall here in this space and we were cutting off natural light, the house would be worth $100,000 less.
Interesting.
Understand the monetization of homes, understand design, understand capital investments relative to what you're going to get back on those. One of the major flaws of a competitive brokers program where they were lending money for people to get their homes fixed up for free was it's great to give people money to fix up homes for free, but if the captain at the helm of the ship doesn't know what they're doing and that money's mismanaged, you might as well just, torch it. So someone has to understand why a certain color white right now on the outside of a home makes sense. Guess what? If that white goes too yellow, it's wrong. If it goes too institutional on the other end, it's wrong. All these decisions, people that do other things all day, every day for a living don't understand how critical the nuances of the decision making that goes on in real estate is. The
very little details could mean a lot in terms of the sale, timing of the sale.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I agree with you. And it's very interesting that you bring that up, and we'll get more into that. Maybe we should actually just talk about that now. Staging, how important is staging? Because I've had properties for sale before where it wasn't staged, and then after the staging, it seemed to get more attention. I feel like there are people that are visual, and can see what something can become. Like when, I don't know if you like this building, but when I came in here, in this building that we're filming at, there were animals locked up in cages. I think there were children sadly living here as part of this family. And there was cars. I think the people owned like a repo business or something like that. So I was like, I can make this place beautiful. But how important is staging for those that may not have a vision for a sale?
So I've done a lot of quantitative research on staging. That's the other thing I'll mention is at the end of the day, this business is about analysis. It is about the numbers. The numbers never lie. And if you can't find the numbers in the neighborhood, go 3 towns over and then extrapolate for the difference in location. So everyone says, but if I had a dime for every time someone said, this is a Picasso, Tracy, there is no price that can be put on it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, and I wrote in the book, there are no Picassos in real estate. And I took a big painting and I like threw an X over it. There are no Picassos in real estate. Everything is quantifiable. And it's a business of numbers. So staging, all the research I did on that, I watched it because, and here's how you figure things like this out, Simon. I had a developer come to me in Tiburon, house was overpriced. I'm always like the rescue agent, right? Agent out the listing for 8 months, it wasn't selling, this woman's going down, like the whole Titanic's going down on this development deal in Tiburon for like an $8 million home.
Wow.
And what happens is when people start getting panicked financially, then they really start to blow themselves up with bad decision-making under pressure. I took the listing. I said, we're going to price it here. The staging is great. Well, guess what? She prices it $1 million over what she agreed to. Same story. Now I'm stuck with still an overpriced listing. And I said, we can't sell it at this price. The market would have paid you that already with your other agent. She comes along and says, get rid of the staging. I said, that's going to cost you $350,000 in proceeds.
Wow.
Guess what? That house sold for the $1 million under plus the $350,000. I can almost down to the dime. So in my opinion, and you have to pick the right stager, there are 1 million mid-level crappy stagers who actually, in my opinion, devalue homes by bringing crap in from Target and throwing it in a $5 million
Very
home.
cheap furniture that makes
it's
the
awful.
house
It
cheap.
actually brings the level of finishes in the home down when the furniture is not
so
commiserate.
Interesting.
So I only work with 1 or 2 stagers around the country. One's LA based. They have now a whole warehouse up here for my business and other agents now. The level of art you want in everything in design for selling homes, people don't really realize what makes a consumer's eyes drawn to a listing and what makes their eyes lock onto that listing, right? They're flipping through realtor.com or whatever, and all of a sudden they go like this and they don't want to leave the listing. That eyeball attraction, that wanting to stay on a listing has to do with very high levels of contrast. I had a $10 million listing one time where the designer was from New York and all the tonalities were muted. It was like a soft beige, a soft cream, and there was no art popping out of the walls. I walked into it, and she's a very well-known designer out of New York, and I walked in the home and I said to my clients, this is not translating on photos. This house is dead in photography.
Wow.
So you've got a layer. We start with the floor, which should be dark, or if it's light, I can explain that. But the floor is usually darkened, or it was gray. That's out now, but kind of a beautiful, grabby gray was overdone. And then we have a white, beautiful textured rug. Then we usually do kind of a gray linen restoration hardware, kind of big sectional. Then we've got pillows on top of that. You keep layering the contrast. And then all the walls should be neutralized. Right now, there's a lot of wood coming in too. And then you want huge pictures, huge art of abstraction, punching colors into the walls so that you've got like this. That's what people want to look at. That's what makes something interesting. So when I walk into someone's home and they're like, but these blonde hardwood floors are fine. I'm like, no, they're not, because you don't understand how the layering for furniture is going to work on these floors. When you've got white walls, white kitchen cabinets, white marble slabs, and a bunch of blonde floors, the house just caves in on you. And these are hard things for people to understand unless they're in this world all day, every day. And that's where what you mentioned earlier, Simon, where the trust comes in. Why should they believe me? Why should they think that I know I'm going to make money on their home by making those floors dark and taking 2 weeks of their lives to do it and moving them out? You asked, the hardest part of real estate is getting people to trust your seminal advice based on your experience, because they just see you as a woman that's coming along and getting a huge commission. And I don't know why I should trust her. She's already being paid too much for what she does for a living anyway.
That's their initial thought.
That's their initial thought. And there's 5 other people behind me. They'll go, oh, you don't need to stain those floors. Tracy's wrong. We can do it for this, and you don't need to do that.
And they'll say we could sell it for higher.
So I'm competing against ghosts every day. Think about that. If I was in the financial services business and I had to have all these checks and balances, I couldn't tell people things that weren't true. But in this business, I can tell anybody that what they want to hear to grab the business from somebody like me. And that's
what a dirty game it is. That's crazy that it happens in this industry and also in luxury real estate. But I could totally understand someone coming in really desperate to get their first or second or third sale of the year, or whatever it may be, and really feeding the client lies just to get that listing back. What people don't realize is the client ultimately is going to lose a lot of time with their property. If they list it with the wrong agent, they're going to go nowhere for almost a year, according to some of these contracts. And it's just going to cost them at the end. And as you said earlier in the podcast, the tides will shift. Now they're going to even lose even further by not hiring a person that's well experienced, such as yourself.
Yeah, and you also don't know. I remember just before 9/11, we didn't know that was going to happen. I had developer clients, very good clients of mine, who were both architects. So they were not flush financially. I think architects are like the most underpaid. I mean, they're a very valuable part of our society. Architects don't make a lot of money. Look at their contribution to the landscape, right? They were doing a big spec flip on West Shore in Belvedere. And I kept saying, come on, you guys, you got to put the gas pedal down. It's like August 30th. Kids are going back to school. This house was supposed to be on August 15th in advance of school decisions. We're just going to add this. Tracy, we just need this. Well, I'm loading the listing the morning of 9/11, loading it in, watching the airplanes hit those towers. And I still get chills even thinking about this story. And I called my clients and said, you guys, I'm sorry, I can't put this listing on today. Look what's going on. Well, guess what? That was, 9/11. There wasn't an over $3 million sale in Marin County for 5 months. I sold the first one that transacted over $3 million. No, everybody was paralyzed in terms of investing in the high end. That terrorism went much further than people worrying about.
Killed the markets.
It killed markets. Mm-hmm. They lost all their profit that they were going to make in that home by being 2 weeks too late on the completion. Insane. So timing, people, when they sit on their hands, I've always said to people, time is nobody's friend in a divorce, and it's nobody's friend in a real estate transaction. The protracted time that it takes for people to make those kinds of decisions can literally flip their lives. And that's why there's so much that goes into decision-making in real estate for the best outcomes. So
very well put, Tracy. Thank you. All right. So we've talked about having a very important real estate agent take care of you to build trust when you're selling a house or even buying a house, because those are also missed opportunities. There's that one dream home, et cetera. So what are the most important qualities someone should look for in a real estate agent when they are either selling or buying?
Okay, so I think a number of things. Number one, it would be that agent's market knowledge in terms of deep dives into numbers.
Okay.
Why did Jane's house 4 doors down the street only traded $1,100 a foot, but Bill's house over there went for $2,300 a foot? Why? What? The construction was only $800 a foot. What was the differential of the $500 a square foot? Someone has to sit down and pick through the weeds of analysis and understand the nuances that drive value and drive ultimate sales prices. That market knowledge, that's absolutely, and I'm, right now I'm coaching my daughters in Aspen, and one of the things we're going over all the time is numbers. Why, is it most real estate markets, I always say to people, this is not Kansas City, okay? We don't have flat miles of subdivisions with cookie cutter homes, with like that, whatever that series was where, Stepford Wives or Housewives or whatever, where everyone's at the same house. This is the landscape, especially in the Bay Area, it's challenging. We've
Sure.
got weather differentials. You can go 5 miles down the street and it's a fog belt all day.
Or 5 minutes.
Yeah, or 5 minutes. The house faces north versus south. What is southern exposure worth versus northern exposure?
Sure. Especially to the Asian community.
Yes.
With doors.
Yeah. And what are power lines worth? I mean, one of the biggest problems is we're in view-driven submarkets throughout the Bay Area. And when you've got power lines crossing that view, where is the discount in that? And how do you tell the seller, I'm sorry, you're just simply worth $500,000 less because and it will cost you that to get those power lines out of your view. So there are many things in a quantitative analysis that are unknowns, that are subjective. Noise, what's somebody's tolerance for ambient road noise off of freeways, okay? How do you reduce the valuation? And then how do you tell the seller that so that you don't lose the listing by being honest and offending them? See, this is where the whole crux of why you said, what's the hardest part about the job? It's honesty. Honesty is the hardest part of the job.
So it sounds like two parts here. One is analytics and really understanding your niche, neighborhoods, counties, region, et cetera. And the second part would be honesty, really being not only honest with yourself, but also with the client enough to do something that is maybe not beneficial to your end of pay at the end of the transaction, but more beneficial to the client. And so honesty goes a long way. So if you guys are interested in becoming real estate agents, make sure you know your market and make sure that you're honest with your client.
The other thing I would say, Simon, on the buy side, there are many homes I've talked to people out of buying knowing that I could well lose that buyer. Wow. They might go to Orinda and say, I can get 30% more home over here. Why would I buy in Marin County? They're both suburbs of the Bay Area and they both have nice weather. We both have pools, There are times where I've said to somebody, you can't buy that house. I wouldn't sell it to my family members. I think you're making a mistake. I'll put that in writing if they do buy the home. Talking people out of homes is as important as it is being supportive of them for a home they love. They don't know enough to know that they might be making a decision where when they go to sell in 10 years, the market went up by 27 or 30% and their house only went up by 10%. Wow. I dealt with a seller in Ross, California, who bought a home and literally didn't touch it for 14 years. And I went in there and he's pounding his fist. This should have appreciated. Look at the way the market. Oh my God. How can my house? I said, because you didn't touch it. The finishes were 20 years old when I walked in here and sold it to you. Now they're another 10 years old. And straight organic depreciation due to age of finishes will offset appreciation and the house flatlines. Very few people understand that. But if you buy a home that already is 20 or 30 years old and you don't touch it for the duration of your ownership, you're going to be right back to where you started when you bought that house. You have to keep investing in these homes. Like, if you bought a car and you had ripped upholstery, you wouldn't leave the ripped upholstery there for 10 years. You'd patch it to sell the car, right? So, of course, underselling homes.
Yeah, you're going to get a devalued price offer.
And people don't, the depreciation absolutely offsets organic appreciation and you end up where you started. And then, of course, the real estate agent gets blamed for that.
Of course. Who else would it be?
Yeah.
What's interesting you mentioned is the buyer, talking a buyer out of buying a property. I've never probably met a real estate agent that would admit to that because I've met one agent that said this house may not be safe for your kids because it was in the hill. It was also in Ross. It was on Wellington Avenue. That's a very hill-sided area. It was around our budget when we were looking, but it felt like someone could fall off a cliff, so to speak. And the agent said, well, you may not want to consider this property at that time. This is before we met you. And I was like, well, I want it. And I was like, why is this agent doing this to me? But that was actually probably a decent agent because she saw what my virgin eyes could not realize at that moment in time. And like everything in life with me, when I don't get something always better comes along. And hopefully the property I got with you, Tracy, is the better that came along. So only time will tell.
Buying a flat lot in the flats, there is no better investment, at least in Marin County. I believe this applies to a lot of submarkets. level lot in the flats that's walkable with indoor outdoor living, and the sequencing, I call it the magical 1 2 3 4 sequencing. House with a big open great room to flat land to pool, if you can get one in, to some kind of outlook or view. It's the 1 2 3 4 sequencing that creates the most equity in any home. And that applies to most markets, I believe, around the country, but I can certainly speak to the Bay Area.
If I put a pool in my architectural plans, I think my neighbors might have a heart attack. I'm just saying. Hopefully they don't watch this. All right. Okay. What are the biggest trends you're seeing in the real estate market right now? Now, you did mention grays are out. Very interesting. Gray floors have gone. I do like our tile floor here, though, however.
Yeah, because it's a soft gray and it's timeless, and you've got organic wood and enough white going on. If it was gray walls, the biggest mistake people make is painting all their walls gray because gray was in 10 years ago. I'm like, gray doesn't belong on walls. It belongs on linen sofas from Restoration Hardware or whatever, and some gray tonality in the floors, but you cannot paint walls gray. People have a seminal response to gray walls. They immediately feel depressed when they walk into a space and all the walls are gray.
I have to repaint my condo, which I haven't been able to sell for a while now.
Sorry, Simon. I'll give you the right white color. You'll be fine.
I might have to learn painting next. Yeah. Okay, so the biggest trends are no grays. Do not paint your walls gray. And what else? What else would we add to that trend in the real estate market? I know the interest rates are quite high. So maybe we're seeing less offers on properties, or is that even a thing right now?
Yeah, well, so and to finish on the design, I would tell you, it's funny. There's a beautiful home on this woman's Instagram. She's a designer. I think it's an AI house. It is perfection. I'm actually going to show it to you.
When you say AI house, what do you mean by that?
I mean, I think it might have been designed by a robot. We'll
really?
see. I mean,
is that the future for design, you think?
I mean, it could be. This house is perfection, and everyone's kind of bantering around, where is this? Does this really exist? I think it's an interesting thing. Okay. This house is perfection. So up until the last, year, it's been tall, pretty neutralized white walls because we want to showcase big modern art and things like that. Open floor plans are still absolutely a must. If you have a perfect rectangle with high ceilings where we've got a big open kitchen with a huge, the center island is the nucleus of our home now. People don't realize how important the central island is in a kitchen. And the way I design mine now is we can get 8 chairs around it with open-ended seating on each end. Really, that becomes a dining room table. But it should be that open floor plan concept, then a big open dining area, and then a big LRU sectional to watch TV and hang out. If you have that, very little else is necessary in a home. Honestly.
I'm sending you my designs for Ross. You're going to have to comment on them.
I can't wait to see them.
Well, they're nice, I thought.
I can't wait to see them.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about experience. We talked a little bit about real estate agents, what's in, what buyers and sellers should expect from their real estate agent. Honesty seems to be a very big one. Let's talk about experience. What are some of the most memorable deals you worked on? You don't have to mention mine just because you're here, but what are some of the cool ones? And I'm sure you have quite a few because you've sold homes, I would say upwards of 10 million, some properties that you probably walk in and you go, I wish I'd lived here, or this is a nice house. Tell me about
I've sold the most expensive home in the history of Marin, which is $28 million.
$28
million. At 32 Shady Lane.
32 Shady Lane. That's right. That's a nice property. Beautiful. Did that person end up gutting that house and rebuilding it? Was that the same house?
No, it's an interesting home. It's been around since the turn of the century. And it's a spectacular 1.7 flat acres with 10,000 square feet of livable detached guest house. The grounds are magnificent. One of the things people, and I just posted something on my social this week about the importance of landscaping. What happens is people get going, they fix up their homes, and they go, we're burned out. We're not going to put great furniture and art in here, and those shrubs are fine. Landscaping needs to track the capital investment in the structure. Okay. It needs to be organized. It needs to be thoughtfully placed. Landscape architects are a brilliant component of the overall monetization of a house.
Wow.
So think about your grounds. Think about creating flat play spaces if you're in a kid-driven neighborhood or you're in a school district-driven area where young families are going to be buying. There's got to be some lawn to market. And we can get around all the water conservation now with great, there's wonderful artificial turf now that looks so real. You have to bend down and feel it. Yeah. But having organized landscaping, I could take a roof deck in Soho, New York, and make it stunning, and it's a roof deck, and make you want to go up there and hang out with the spaces that we create visually, right? Wow. Using great olive trees that have silver in them. And olive trees really speak to people in Northern California, and they make you feel like you're in the Napa Valley. So you can float with some landscape design in terms of visual, great visual treats for people, but it also really helps sell your house for more money.
I think a lot of people overlook landscaping.
Yes.
They find it as an additional expense, but you see it as you're putting together one complete package, like an outfit. You have to match everything to look good.
That's right. You would not forget your shoes for the ball, right? Only Cinderella could do that. Whoever did that. But,
It worked out for her in that movie. It doesn't work out in real estate. All right. What are some of the biggest lessons you learned over the years?
Wow. Some of the biggest lessons I've learned are that it's very, very hard to predict. This is, it's hard to predict who you're getting into bed with in terms of being a client. I try to.
We're not going to talk about any crazy clients, are we?
Listen, we've had stuff that should be in books. I had the U.S. Marshals seize one of my properties I was listing in the middle of the listing.
Of a sale.
He was white collar crime. He was going off to jail, and all the assets were seized. And this guy, leading up to this, I could tell. Simon, it would take me an hour to tell you this story, but some of the stuff we've dealt with, where we have to, the guy's going to jail, and now I've got to talk to him still like a client and still be in the weeds of the listing while he's being carted off. And we have had after 27 years of doing this, you can imagine the totality of the stories. And one of the more challenging thing is, I'll say to myself, I don't trust that person. I don't think this is going to be a good experience. And I've walked from very few pieces of business, but I've walked from some and then turned around and watched them sell the next day with another agent. I thought I should have tolerated that. So it's and then other people, I thought, this is the most wonderful human being. This is going to be the best experience.
And
then just like what's happened here in that house that I mentioned to you, where all of a sudden the price got jacked. I was disarmed from selling the home. Now I still have the listing. I'll be blamed that it didn't get sold. See, that's the hard part, is the prediction of who people are and if they're going to be your partner in the sale of their home. And I'm always saying to people, this is a partnership. I'm not going to remodel your home to sell it and do all this work because it's bettering me. It's not bettering me. It's a lot more work for me. I am trying to help you because I care enough, and I want you to tell 10 friends about how that house sold successfully.
And that's how you build such a name and reputation, because you're really doing what's best for the client.
And I'm always telling people, you can do 50 things right, but if there's one mistake, one issue, they will remember the one thing that you did wrong, which is why I'm such a hard ass in my office with my staff. It's unacceptable to me to somebody to make a mistake on a contract, or somebody to make a mistake on scheduling something. It's a white glove service from the minute someone calls me to the day that house records. And even after that, I'm still always helping them. There is no margin of error in real estate, or they're going on to the next person and they'll tell their 10 friends you did a bad job because you made one mistake.
I love that. I tell that to our clients or my staff that deals with luxury travel as well, because we offer like a white glove service for travel. So I tell that to my agents all the time. Hey, you can't make a mistake. These people are expecting X level of service. And the last move you make can be your final move. So it seems like the lessons you've learned or there's many, but some of them you mentioned are the tides can change in any direction. And sometimes when you go into something and you expect the greatest outcome, you're not going to get it. And sometimes it's the reverse. And there are things out of your control that happen in real estate, which is no reflection of you.
That's correct. And even let's just say the seller sets too high of a price, or and one of the things really that's just so intolerable for me is people who change agreements after they've been executed.
Oh, wow, that happens.
Oh, all the time. You sign a listing agreement, and they're like, no, we want this, and you're stuck. You've done all the work to get the house ready. They've jacked the price. Now the house has become, there's never going to be multiple offers on it because the dynamics of pricing are critical in this business. We're in a very price sensitive market in the Bay Area.
Yep.
This isn't a market where you go, I want 10 million, and a year later you get 10 million.
Yeah.
This is a market where if you don't price it at 8,995, it's never going to 10 million.
And at the right time.
And at the right time. So the velocity of trading, the velocity of how a price moves has to do with how you originally set it. And getting that extra, I call it like the cream on top of the coffee, money that you never deserved because of the inflationary valuation of multiple offers.
Wow.
So I did research on this for the book. I called agents in Detroit, Michigan. I go, let me understand something in Detroit. If you price an apartment in downtown Detroit artificially low, will it get driven up in multiples, and will that? Yes. So everybody, I called around the country to make sure this was not a Bay Area thing. So pricing at or slightly under where the numbers suggest will always get you over if the house has been prepared correctly, Simon. And that extra money, that extra 400, 500, like that house that I just mentioned earlier, that house isn't worth 2.2 million. It is not worth that. But by pricing it under 2 and making it look snazzy with staging, he was going to get an extra 200 or 300,000 that he didn't deserve because the price felt right. People wanted to jump on it. Everyone's inclination as a seller is to say, well, if that price didn't work at a high level, we can always reduce it. Or why don't people just make offers at lower levels if they see it not selling? That's another really interesting psychology. This book is all psychology. People don't move on prices until they see them physically lowered in MLS.
And the book Tracy keeps mentioning is The Real Estate Rescue, How America Leaves Billions Behind in Residential Real Estate and How to Maximize Your Home's Value. This is a great book, by the way. We're going to get into this in a bit as well. Thank you, Tracy, for that. Just final question. You didn't have to fight with the real U.S. Marshals in regards to that listing, did you?
No, I'm lucky they kept me on.
Okay.
So no. But that was quite a story. Anyway, there's a lot of those stories of the unexpected happening. Some crazy thing goes on. We've had, people, ghost stories, there's big ghost sightings. And then do we disclose the fact that we felt there might have been, paranormal activity in the house? Oh my
gosh, I can imagine.
Yeah, or what do you disclose? I mean, one of the homes I sold is, if you're into numerology, is a number 5.
I am.
Okay, well, number 5 homes are known to be somewhat disastrous. They can cause financial ruination, divorce, all these bad things, right? And how you can read how you get to a number 5 house. It's how the numbers add up and get divided. Anyway, this one house in our community had been around for 100 years, and every single family that has ever lived there has divorced. So when I sat down to do disclosures, I thought, do I have to say this? I mean, is this insane to say to some young, beautiful new couple starting out their lives? Sorry to tell you this, but every family is divorced. So I didn't do it as a listing agent, but their buyer's representative verbally said to them, look, this is a weird subject, but I'm just going to tell you guys this. Wow. So she checked off, what is disclosure, right? We know what adversely impacts the value or desirability of a home. Well, some of this stuff, if you're into it, can affect desirability. The history of people dying, the history of who's lived there. Why did somebody sell?
I'm so into that stuff. You'd be surprised.
Pretty interesting.
And we could talk about that in a bit as well if you like, but that is very interesting. I was going to ask you, what are some of the biggest mistakes people make, but we've covered it, I think, throughout this, podcast. We've talked a little bit about how real estate has changed since you started. I feel like it's gotten way more analytical. It's gotten more competitive because of so many agents maybe not really telling the truth about listings. Do you want to add anything to that, or do you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think I would say to people, to my sellers, those buyers are so educated before they walk into your home. They've been sitting on Redfin and Zillow. They see the comps, they see the analytics. They know why something's worth $900 a foot versus $1,300 a foot, et cetera. You better be as educated as those buyers when you walk into these houses. The buyers are 10 steps ahead of the agents in the world we're living in with technology than they were when I started the business. They relied on us in an MLS book before the internet showed up.
Yep.
And they relied on our dissemination of numbers and of comps and all that. The buyers are incredibly educated. They understand the market. And our job is to interpret those numbers for them and to negotiate the hell out of what they want in a reasonable way so they don't lose the house. They get the home, but they're not overpaying for it on the buy side.
Excellent point. And, another thing that's changed, I would say, and we need to talk about is social media. How has social media been such a big influence in real estate and real estate agents?
Yeah, that's a great question for my daughter, Grace, too, because she runs our social. But it is, listen, marketing for real estate has completely shifted. When I get a call from somebody, sometimes over the age of 60, they're like, we want a virtual tour. We want it. I always say to them, everybody in the world we're living in right now has ADD. Nobody will watch content past 15 to 18 seconds. And the best way to sell this house is for me to stand in it and say, this is why I love this house. And you're not going to find this anywhere else. And have somebody quickly cut beautiful images of the house flying around with quick stats, and they're off. It is so shifted. The dissemination of information has to be instant. It has to be visual. It has to be layered. It has to have contrast. It has to have great music. Forget home tours. Forget protracted videos. When I get an agent sending me a 5-minute, I sit there and I take the arrow and I just speed it right through. I go, what does that bedroom look like? I don't have the tolerance to look at it, and I'm in the business. You think the consumer is going to sit there and go, yeah, la-da-da, and some elevator music playing, and, so it has to be fast. It has to be digested. And the other thing about social media, I think there's way too many agents profiling themselves, walking around because they're handsome or they're good looking, and they're kind of like, let's take a look at LA, but, you have to tell people something they don't know. That is our value, right? Is to stand in there and explain why the home has great value for the level of capital improvements, or how it would take 4 years to get that kitchen opened up in the world of permitting today. We have to tell the backstory. I'm always, when I take the verbiage that I use on MLS, very, very limited in terms of how many words, I am telling the story they can't see in the pictures about the value behind the pictures.
Wow.
So marketing is a huge part of what we do. And I love telling the narrative. Every story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, even if you only have 120 keywords or whatever, and punch the audience with that which they don't. They can see there's a Sub-Zero in the kitchen. Yeah. You don't need to say Sub-Zero. Like, why? It's sitting there. They can flip, or it's on the website. Tell people what they don't know and create a case for value. We're almost like lawyers arguing for value.
Good for you. You captivate them right away with things that they are not visually seeing right away.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah. Or, most private home in the neighborhood, or complete privacy and quiet. It's very hard to show people privacy and quiet. You have to tell them things like that might make them want to go see the house.
To bring it out.
Yes.
Interesting. You're part of the agency. How do you like working for the agency? Now, I want to tell you, my wife makes me watch that Housewives show. So we know, the Beverly Hills Housewives. And when you joined the agency, Veronica was like, oh, my God. And I watch it, too. So I'm probably going to get some slack for this from like maybe the jiu-jitsu crowd, but it's a good show. So how is it like working for the agency, and what made you choose to be part of it, or working with the agency, I should say?
Okay, great question. Well, Mauricio Umansky, who founded the company with Billy Rose, who was an entertainment lawyer, reminds me of the entrepreneurial spirit that my former husband and I had in terms of our outlook on owning brokerages. We started a company called Morgan Lane in Marin, and then we bought Pacific Union in 2008 and grew it to the 5th largest brokerage in the country.
Wow.
Mark McLaughlin is very entrepreneurial. Mark would be like, let's buy this, Tracy. Let's do this. We have no business buying a big brokerage. We're buying a big brokerage when the market has tanked. I mean, that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. Mauricio has that same dimension to him. When I sat down with him in Beverly Hills after a conference and I was talking about wanting to move on and go under a different brand, he's like, I'll do whatever you want. I'll open an office wherever you want. Get whoever you want in the office.
That's awesome.
And the way he responded to me reminded me of Mark and myself when we were a young married couple growing businesses and just rolling the dice. Like, We never thought about catastrophic outcomes. We just did what we felt like doing. So I love his entrepreneurial spirit. He's been very supportive of me and Marin. I've been operating as a one-man band there, and now I'm in Aspen working for the agency and loving it. Here's a quick story on why the branding is so important for a brokerage. As my daughter Whitney and I were in London, I had my agency hat on, we're in Hyde Park, and a guy's on a horse, very proper Brit, riding a horse, you know, a hunter jumper kind of style. And he pulls over, he goes, "The agency? You work for the agency? We love Mauricio." off the horse. Everywhere we went, in Paris, people were like, "The agency? You work for the agency?" It's a worldwide brand vis-a-vis, you know, $1 million listing, the Housewives of Beverly Hills, and now, of course, Buying Beverly Hills, and some other, you know, offshoots of their. I mean, they're doing great. Now he's on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah,
Did you see that?
I didn't know he has those moves.
I want to see those moves.
I've never seen him dance. He usually has good jokes on the show.
Yeah,
but that's awesome.
So I'm telling you, even though the brokerage, it's about 800 plus people now. There is the brand I'm a big brand person. I just love branding. That's why Apple, when we get a new iPhone, we sit there and touch the packaging and we open it up. The experience of a brand is just really critical to people's understanding of who you are. And I went to that brand because I felt it had dimension and I felt like people understood what it was. I don't feel that about every brokerage.
I agree. I think the branding there is next level. It's almost like the cool place to work at or be with. It's insane and incredible.
It's a lot of young people. You go to their yearly you know, rah. You know, it feels like 80% of the population is under 35. It's a lot of young, dynamic, excited people. Are very kind to each other in the agency. That's awesome. Yeah, I really like what he's built there.
It's not cutthroat like maybe some other places in terms.
No, it has a totally different culture. Totally different culture. Awesome. I'll refrain from what brokerages I would be thinking of.
Let's talk about your book, Real Estate Rescue. Why did you write this book, and why should someone consider purchasing it? Why is it important to them for sales? And just briefly go into that aspect, and we have some follow-up questions about the book as well.
Sure. So the book, the idea, the light bulb that went off for the book, and it's written about, is I walked into a home. I knew the family a bit because we had all raised children together. They were going through a divorce, and the husband gave the wife a $5.5 million asset. Said, "This is your house to sell. I'll take other assets." She spent some time talking about the woes of her divorce, a lot of time, to her newly licensed socialite friend from San Francisco who decided to hang a shingle in real estate in Marin County. She had a home in Marin. She was bored. She's like, "I'm going to get a license." She happened to listen to the divorcee's woes, and the divorcee felt very compelled to hire her out of guilt for taking so much of her time listening, and she'd been a good, supportive friend. This is the number one mistake people make. They feel obligated because Aunt Eloise just got a license, and Aunt Eloise has been nice to the family, or some friend listened to my divorce woes or whatever. They make these decisions on an agent based on emotional things that have nothing to do with hiring a business consultant. She hires this woman. The first offer as a buyer's agent that I made on that house, I believe, was for $5 million. It was listed at like 5.5. Maybe we would have gone up to 5.2. 2 staging changes later, 10 mortgage payments later.
Oh, wow.
And the following year, I walked in there with another family. We paid 4.6 for the house.
Oh, wow.
So I wrote in the book, and I watched this happen, and I thought, she has just lost $500,000. This woman hadn't worked since college. This was all the money she was going to live on. I watched her lose $500,000 because of the choice she made in her realtor. The realtor had the house wrongly staged, rooms that should have looked like the dining room looked like. She screwed the staging up. She changed that twice. She overpriced the home. And more importantly, they didn't respond to that first offer that would have gotten that house sold for 5.2. We would have gone up to 5.2. So I wrote in the book, I hope the friendship was worth $500,000 because that's what it cost her to be her friend.
Wow.
And I thought, there's a book in this. I'm going to write about all these things that I see that cause people's asset to go down because they make very wrong choices when they go to sell their home or buy the home.
That's so nice of you. And you're so experienced. So this book is an actual value to anyone looking to buy, sell, and really understand what the purpose of a real estate agent is and why it's important to have a good one. And, you know, friendships in business, that is it's one that you could probably tell me a lot about. You've mentioned some key takeaways from the book. Is there anything else you want the viewers to know about the book, in addition to what you told me earlier? What other insights can they expect from this book?
I address things like the crucial need to have your permitting done when you make capital improvements to a home. I have had to sell homes with zero permitting, 10,000 square foot home that was renovated behind the city's back. It's a disaster. Every time someone thinks that they're cutting corners by doing work illegally and that it isn't permitted according to current building standards, they pay for it in the end.
Wow.
The stress on the agent, the stress on the seller, the disclosure issues.
Because you have to disclose these things.
And then
they don't want you to, right?
The cloud that moves over the house, I don't care how beautiful it is a black cloud over a house. So permitting, some of this stuff sounds boring, but actually the way that the book is very funny. I mean, I just went for it in terms of putting humor in there. It's not a highly academic book, but boy, it talks about the repercussions. And I can't tell, I mean, I've walked into multi-million-dollar homes and people are like, yeah, I just was dealing with a $35 million home in Belvedere. No, none of the bathrooms are permitted. I said, and I'm representing the buyer, and I said to the listing agent, it's all off market. What do you think the city's going to do when they come in for that mandatory resale inspection? They're going to see that marble is 2 years old. It's not 20 years old. And how do we put that into our offer? The quantitative decline in value
is insane
because of the unknowns on this. And we're going to inherit all the problems. Is that going to end up in 2 years?
Or any potential lawsuits that could come with it as well, right? From the sale, I would imagine if someone finds out something's not permitted or maybe they didn't disclose it to you.
Correct.
It's just a problem all over.
Yeah, and permitting really tracks building codes. Building codes change every year. You all of a sudden don't have a handrail on 5 steps and somebody buys your home and they fall down it and break their neck. Guess who is getting sued?
You're liable.
So everything, especially in California, Colorado where we're working is a little bit different. It's more of a buyer beware. Here, the laws and the contract are very favored towards the buyer. So you can bet when you close a home and there were things you skipped in terms of the permitting, that you have to wake up every day and worry, is something going to happen in that house because it wasn't done to code? Because some contractor I hired did a fly-by-night quick bathroom for me. I mean, you have to really be careful.
I completely agree with the real estate sale transaction part that everything should be for the buyer if you're selling a multi-million-dollar property. But I've had a horrible incident with a renter where a renter at the condo downtown staged a tripping hazard and then got out of a lease and then tried to sue me back for the security deposit until I proved to the judge in like the stack of well-prepared papers that this is a fake staging incident. And then the judge wouldn't even grant me what it was due in the rent per contract. She wanted us to walk away. So in San Francisco, it's like such a renter's market and I would imagine a buyer's market as well versus a seller.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the other thing I always stress to every seller, in fact, I won't take a listing unless we do between 7 and 9 inspections on the front end, and all of those reports are put in the buyer's packet along with their disclosures. I'm not selling homes where I don't know what I'm selling, and all of a sudden the buyer has got me backed into a corner after they get their own report from their own inspector, and he's hyperinflated the value by 50% or whatever it costs to do that. I just won't take the listing.
That goes back to kind of what you said about trust. It's a two-way thing, and it also the lessons you've learned where you don't know what you're expecting. You thought this seller was going to be great, as a great person, but maybe they're not being as honest with you, and it's a wild card in some cases where you realize something that you've got into and you're like, hey, what do I do with this?
Well, I'm stepping into the highway of liability on these houses. It is such a litigious business. That CAR purchase agreement in California, I don't even know how many pages it is now. And the disclosure laws here, because every time someone sneezes the wrong way and somebody sued somebody, it's in the disclosure packet.
Incredible.
People need to take that very seriously because people can
it could
2 years later wake up and sue you for anything.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that, guys. Real Estate Rescue. You got to get this book. If you are in real estate, selling a home or buying a home, Tracy put her heart and soul, maybe some tears into it. I don't know, but I'm sure there's a couple chapters in here that really hit a note. Okay, let's talk about family business. Your daughters are here today. They have great energy. I made them a cup of coffee, so I feel proud. I don't know if it woke them up or not, but if not, we'll do it again. How does it feel to have your daughters? It's like the American dream, right? Every dad, mom wishes that their daughters, their son would be part of their business, something that they've built. And in your case, what you've built is not a ma and pa small little business. This is something that they can monetize on, really take it to a level above you if that's your goal for them. And how does it feel to really get them in and see them actually doing it?
Yeah, I cannot tell you how satisfying this is. I wasn't planning on my age at starting a second run at real estate and going back to the bottom of Everest. Because every year, if you think about the only acknowledgement we have in this business is rankings. That's it. Yeah. Nobody's patting you on the shoulder going, you did a great job every day. I don't have a manager. I'm just one-man band out every day. And the only way we have to understand how well we're doing is relative to other producers, right? So that's all you have. To start that over at my age is unusual. But I love my family more than anything. These girls are my best friends. They both expressed interest in it. It was very interesting. Whitney and I were down in Laguna Beach doing like a hiking wellness trip, and there was enormous drama going on in a deal that I was involved in on both sides. The seller just decided, even though they wanted to sell the home to this guy and they got a great price, that they were not letting him in the house until they left. That's illegal. And every family member was getting COVID. One would end with COVID. The next one got COVID. They had 4 kids. So, it was just all. And Whitney, we would come home and Whitney was in software sales. And she's like, Mom, what happened today? Is Steve getting in? She started getting involved in the story. And she's like, this business is more about psychology than it is actually about, it's a psychological business. How are you going to get this guy in there? You're on both sides of this. So that's when the light bulb went off for Whitney. And she's like, I actually think I want to do this for a living. I don't think she would have thought that unless she had been listening to that story every day when we got back from our hiking. She's like, oh my God, Mom. So that's that. So then she went, got a license, hit the ground running, and is doing an incredible job in our Aspen market, selling very high-end homes at a young age already. And
for the agency as well.
Yes, for the agency. And then Grace McLaughlin, who just got out of college a couple of years ago, is doing, at this point, all of our branding and marketing, has a great background in that, great intuition about social media, content, branding, editing.
Which is like the thing to do now, by the way. It's so important.
Yeah. So we have, what's so great is they're both wearing different hats right now, but they both love what they're doing. And it's all part of one business. So and we've had really no conflict. They might tell you something other than that, but it feels so great also to be able to say to Whitney, you go on that meeting, you go to those inspections. I've never had a partner in this business before, and it's a lot on your shoulders to have all the responsibility for everything all at the same time. It's wonderful to have 2 people that I trust implicitly to be a body for me if I can't be somewhere.
To get it done.
Yeah.
You have the utmost trust in them, and they seem to work off each other very well. And if they continue to do that, they're both very young. They could really grow something big. And you mentioned, it seems like family and business has been part of your life. You mentioned Pacific Union. You built it with your husband. You went through a divorce. You guys built it to $2.2 billion in sales. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
That's incredible. And it sold. It was the 5th largest brokerage or real estate firm. Now having your daughters in, is your son also going to join?
My dream would be to pull that boy out of San Francisco and out to Aspen, because I think it's such a great place to raise a family. There's ranch properties. It's not all fancy. That whole valley is a bunch of tech young kids moving in there and having a great lifestyle because tech's so remote now. And I would love to have Ross out there working with us. We'll see. That would be his choice. But
his name is the same name as my favorite town.
Yeah.
The town of Ross. So
I know. I always say to people, I was raised in Ross. My parents still live in Ross. I raised my children in Ross, and my son's name is Ross. Like, if that's not enough of an endorsement, right?
This is why you should get every listing in Ross, in my opinion. All right. For other families that are out there that are looking to get, their sons, daughters, like, for example, when I created this podcast studio, I didn't do it for the money. In fact, I'm not making money off this. I have other businesses, but I enjoy it because I feel like people that come on, such as yourself, have so much to give to me and to others out there in terms of knowledge. I truly appreciate it. But what advice would you give for families out there that are hoping to have their children partake in their business, whatever that business would be? How do you push them? When do you back off? What advice would you give to families?
Exactly. That's a great question. First of all, I never really thought the children would want to do this because they saw the levels of stress and all the hours. And it's a very stressful job. You don't get paid until a house closes. That's like you're out on a limb a lot. You can work months for somebody and maybe you don't ever get paid for that house. They cancel the listing, their life changes. So it's a startup business. You're starting up every day with somebody new, and you're not being paid till the house closes. Think of it like that.
Yep.
So the first piece of advice I would give to people is, if your children are who they are and their heart is in something other than your family business, the best thing to do is let them follow their heart. I never cared what my kids did. I didn't care what grades they got in school. I didn't care where they went to school. I just wanted them to be happy. I didn't want the stress that kids are growing up with now. Pressure, you got to get into an Ivy. I backed off all that, and we worked very hard in front of our children, but we did not push them to do anything. So I thought they're going to organically figure out what they want to do. And if they want to work hard, hopefully that's a DNA. Watching our parents thing, that's not a telling them you're going to get A's, you're going to go to it. I think that backfires on people. So I would say, if your kids don't feel like, if their heart is in ballet and you've got like a software company, don't put them in your software company. But if they like being around you, and I think that's part of this, listen, we have a lot of fun together. We are silly. The stuff that goes on in real estate, the text, our TMT text string is hysterical because everybody's got their quirks, right? Walking these houses. We have one person out in Colorado, we walked in and we were so excited to meet them, and they're older, and she's like, he wasn't there. I've tried to divorce him. I've had 4 attorneys on the call. I want to get rid of him. And then we didn't know whether to hug her because she seemed happy about it or say, oh, we're so sorry. So the girls are kind of watching this, and you just have to like move with people when you're in their home. You don't know what they're going to tell you. You don't know what they need from you. So you're standing there like as their consultant, but yet you're trying to have a professional conversation. The other crazy thing about this business is I showed a house the other day with my darling clients from San Francisco. They had their 2 like 1-year-old and 3-year-old. Can I say this? It was a shit show. They were screaming. The kid is like running down those edges on, and I'm watching going, oh my God, his head's going to get sliced by that edge. The baby's crying. They're all over the place. I'm trying to show them the house. Like, you can't prepare there's no graduate school that prepares you for the craziness that goes on inside people's homes.
Yeah.
And whether you're on the buy side or the sell side, and you're trying to manage that, but stay professional, but tell them what they need to hear, but you're holding a kid and he's screaming. I mean, it's crazy.
And that goes back to the psychology part of it. It seems like you know how to deal with it, or you truly enjoy that topic. I didn't go to college myself, so I agree, like a university, I should say. I did do 4 years at a community college, which I don't want to discuss, but the psychology part of when I did take a course was so fun. We're going to wrap up the family business part of it. We're going to talk about Aspen, why Marin County for when you raise your kids, et cetera, and why Aspen now versus, say, Lake Tahoe, right? Because it's so nearby. I know it's a completely different dynamic. And I think on the Housewives, the Lake Tahoe, the girls went to Lake Tahoe. I watched that episode, and they kind of seemed out of place in that versus Aspen.
That's funny.
So yeah. And that was my perception of it. I don't know if that's how they felt, of course, but why Marin County in your early life and why Aspen now?
Great question. So they're both high-performing markets. Aspen I really chose due to the lifestyle blend of you are living in a place that's comparable to Switzerland or Austria, but it has the elements of sophistication, class, cultural activities of New York City.
Wow.
I've never seen a place in the world that blends those things together, and we're huge alpine athletes. The kids grew up ski racing. We all love alpine sports. We like biking, hiking, yoga.
Wow.
And that place is a playground for athletic adults. But at nighttime, you know, you want the stimulation of places like New York, right?
So it stays open.
Oh, it's amazing.
Okay.
It's become a year-round 12-month, maybe other than May when it's kind of muddy. But, you know, you've got the Aspen Institute there, the Aspen Ideas Fest, which is 3 straight weeks, including Health Week, of the best minds in this world. Jamie Dimon talked. I mean, I've sat in the room with the CEO of Walmart, with 40 people sitting there talking about how he started pushing grocery carts and became the CEO of Walmart.
That's crazy.
I mean, I sit in there and pinch myself and go, am I really in here with like Jamie Dimon? So anyway, you've got that. You've got music. You've got ballet. I just finished a film fest out there where I saw 12 films in 5 days. For me, I don't need to go to. I mean, it's all right there. It's safe. There's very little environmental concerns, maybe fires. Other than that, no earthquakes, no flooding, no. You know, it's a very safe place in terms of health and wellness and your personal safety and environmentally. So I can't say enough great things. And it's, along with Palm Beach, the best investment market in this country.
Along with Palm Beach, interesting. You brought that up. Are you currently living in Aspen? Is that your residency?
I have 2 residents. One is in Aspen and one is in Larkspur, California.
So you're in between.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Back and forth.
Very good. We've talked a lot about selling homes, and you don't know what you're going to expect when you come in the door. How big is divorce when it comes to you having to sell a home, or these families having a hard time or part of the sale? And then we'll talk a little bit about charities, because I think that was a big thing in your past and maybe is currently today. Because,
correct.
So give me a little bit. This is a little bit more deep. You know, go into it as much as you want, but it's a little bit of a switch, I know. But how has that played a role in a real estate agent's life, the divorce aspect, and also oftentimes I would imagine some homes are sold maybe due to some bad situations in the family.
Yeah, divorce, you know, unfortunately, it's a huge part of our lives now, right? The statistics are right up there with, I think it's almost a half and half. Who knows? That's probably a regional thing, and that's probably because when people have more money, they have more choices. So I don't think we see that as much in lower markets. You know, I don't have the stats on it. But divorce is very tricky. I learned a great lesson. You asked, you know, what lessons have you learned? And I remember I had great clients, and they weren't initially calling me back to sell the home. And I called him and I said, hey, I'm really surprised. Like, what's the problem here? I mean, I did a great job. He said, you know, Tracy, my wife, and they weren't divorcing, but I think this is an interesting story. He said, my wife felt like when you were dealing with us that you looked more at me and addressed me more than you did her. And she felt a bit displaced by you.
Oh, okay.
And it's always really good. I mean, part of getting really good at something is listening to feedback about what you didn't do well and correcting that. Ever since that woman told me, or that husband told me that, every time I go on a listing appointment, my eyes are focused 50% on the woman. Yeah. I will oftentimes lead an email with her name versus his.
Wow.
Because we have a tendency in our society to think, well, he probably bought the house. He did, actually. He's the decision maker. And it was easy for me just to look at him more on a business person. She wasn't working. So I learned a great lesson in that. In divorces, to parlay this into divorce, oftentimes women are already feeling incredibly compromised. They maybe don't have a complete management of the assets yet and don't know exactly what's going where, and there's fear. That's fear-based. In wealthier communities, a lot of women have had the privilege of taking 20 years off from working, and all of a sudden they're going to find themselves managing their own assets now, their own home, making decisions they never made before. And they need to trust who they jointly choose. And I get this question a lot. How are you going to work with both of us? How are you going to walk that line, Tracy, where we both feel heard? So I spend a lot of time saying it's actually something I almost specialize in. I've done a great job for divorcing people. I have no emotion involved. I communicate to both of them in real time.
With
Nobody's
respect.
left off the string, even if someone's pushing me, going, you are,
And I would imagine oftentimes they even purposely push you to favor.
Yes, that's right.
I'm the favorite in this
Exactly.
angle.
Or I want it to sell for less because I'm getting a tax write-off here and I'm giving it to her, and you're in the middle of that dynamic. And so
That's crazy that you got to deal with that.
all sorts of stuff. So yeah, it's actually a really good question.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So charities. Now that we mentioned these divorces, tell me a little bit about the charities and giving back that you've been a part of, or why that's important to you.
Yeah. So I think I've always thought that the nemesis in society, the thing that bleeds out to most adversely impact society, is the way children are treated. All of our problems, crime, abuse, drug use, is all from that 0 to 5 age of a parent not caring, not kissing the child, not holding them, not attending to their needs. The bleed off, the ancillary bleed off in society from that is tremendous. So I was watching another one of these child abduction, news excerpts. Some poor migrant family in Arizona had their daughter abducted the same way that Polly Klaas was abducted back in Petaluma, however many years ago, 30 years ago now or something.
God.
And I knew Mark Klaas and Violet, his wife, and I called Mark and I said, I had an idea, I love getting ideas. So I'm like, how did Mark Klaas financially make it through Polly's abduction until they found the guy that did it to her? He said, Tracy, if they hadn't found her body, I think it was in 2 months, I would have gone bankrupt. He had a car leasing business. He said I was paralyzed. So I said, well, who helps these families when their children are abducted pay the mortgage or the rent? He said, there's nobody. There's no charity like that. So I founded Klaas Family Housing with Mark Klaas, and I decided to give a straight percentage of every deal to that. And we did incredible things. We paid, I don't know if you remember the abduction case in Ohio, but one of those girls that lived in that horrible basement, I paid her rent for a year. And she wrote me this beautiful letter saying, I was a moth, now I'm a butterfly. So it was a very, behind the scenes, but Klaas Family Housing, I think, went on for 5 or 6 years, and then Mark got very busy with other things. So we have always supported children. Children have been at the nucleus of it. So then I went into the Center for Domestic Peace in Marin County, which I've worked with for 5 or 6 years now. And same thing, a percentage of every commission goes to them. And they have safe houses in Marin. Abuse is not a socioeconomic thing at all. It happens in wealthier communities all the time. So we're supporting that in Marin County. And then we decided to support a children-oriented charity in Aspen as well. So it's really about kids, because I feel like that's where we've gone wrong. We
Good
really
for you,
have.
Tracy.
So,
Very honorable. Abuse is like the nastiest thing for, especially when it comes to children. I have no place for that. So you doing something for that type of charity is just remarkable. Finally, just one question. Life advice. You've made it. You've sold a company that you've built into the billions. You've become one of America's top real estate agents. You've written a book. You've raised well-mannered kids. Life advice for someone that goes beyond just real estate or being at the coolest firm or having, being a top sales agent. What would you say is something someone should really consider that keeps them happy?
Yeah, and I don't know if these are in order, but number one is health and wellness. It's like being on the airplane. If we don't put our own oxygen mask on first, we can't save our child. If you're not attending to your own sleep, your own what you're eating, and I haven't always been very good at this. This year I started addressing it because it's the kind of business that can take you over physically. You can really start grabbing fast food. You're shaking. There's so much stress involved in the management of deals, especially at high levels. So taking care of yourself and realizing you can't keep putting clients in front of yourself all the time, or you're not going to end up in a good place physically. And you've made all this money, and you're at doctor's offices all the time. I also think picking something that you love to do for a living where it doesn't feel like work, and that's what real estate's for me. I get up at 3 a.m. because I can't wait to have quiet time to think about ideas for the day. or answer emails or do an analysis. So picking a job that doesn't feel like a job, but you can't wait to get there is really, I think, well-heeded advice. And number 3, I would say, is that honesty element. It is really hard to be honest all the time. There are times where you're like, oh my, I mean, look, 2008, a lot of agents were kind of twisting the truth because they hadn't done a deal in 6 months. It's very easy to fall into that, to tell someone what they want to hear because you have to make the money. Agents are going through it right now. Our volume is down. I've never seen such a low volume market in my life.
And it's because of inventory.
No inventory, high rates, all came together, and it's been catastrophic for our industry. I mean, the volume is down. So low, and you can make money in down markets because there's high volume. You can make money in frothy markets like we did for the last 10 years. You can't make money in a no volume market. I mean, so
and you still got to be honest.
Yeah. So I think agents they're spinning right now. What am I going to do? That's an easy time to stop telling the truth and starting to tell people because you're just trying to grab anything for anybody to say yes. So I think those 3 things, honesty, health and wellness, finding what you love to do, are really like a good combination for a great life.
And I'll double down on that. And if I can add to it as well, baby.
Please do, yeah.
I think spending time with the family, if you can have a family, spend time with them and enjoy those moments that sometimes will reset you. And waking up for me at like 4 a.m, I used to wake up at 4 a.m. and I would work out. And that for me was like a joy because you're getting this part of this quiet morning out of the way. You feel ready, prepared. You mentioned health and fitness and you're getting emails done. You just feel ahead. So that is great. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on, sharing some invaluable knowledge on the podcast. I think a lot of people have learned a lot. You're a tremendous person. Your energy is through the roof. When I first met you, I felt it. I feel it today. I'm so thankful to have you on. And we do have a special surprise. Both of your daughters are going to come on the podcast as well. We get to ask them a couple questions, and we're going to get to see how it is like working with you and whether or not you are a nice boss or a mean boss. All of it's going to come out, and I hope you guys enjoy it more so for the memories of the future. Hopefully you guys will remember this moment in time, and that's kind of what I want to bring to people that come on. So thank you again. It's actually my honor. I hope you remember this. I am truly thankful. I mean it. No matter which guests ever come on, you have a special place in my heart because you introduced me to Ross in one way. And I don't mean your son, but the child of Ross. I haven't met your son yet. But you do have a special place in my heart, and I wish you the best of luck in anything you do. And you're welcome to come back on ever if you ever choose to do so. But let's hear what your daughters have to say because...
All right, I got to stick around for this one, Simon. This one I've got to hear. And thank you so much for having me. I loved the interview. You're very, very good at asking the right questions. So thank you.
Thank you for making the time.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I am so excited. I have Whitney and Grace here. They are Tracy's daughters. And now we're going to get to ask them some really cool questions about their mom, as well as some serious questions about real estate, as they are both in the business. So let's get started. Hi, Whitney. Hi, Grace.
Hi.
How are you two doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Are you nervous a bit? You could be honest.
We're excited.
You're excited. I like that. Okay, good. So what is it like growing up with your mom being so successful in what she does and being a top real estate agent?
I think it's been very empowering from a young age watching our mom be a powerhouse, up at the crack of dawn every morning and really just driving her own business, building it from the ground up and just really being her own force.
Awesome. Would you say she is your role model in this space or as someone you look up to?
Yeah, definitely. I think in this space and in other aspects of life.
Yeah. I think we weren't the typical household growing up. We had, sometimes you see a lot of like the fathers out working from like 5 a.m. to 8 p.m., whatever it might be. But in our case, it was both of our parents. And seeing, a woman in that space is really empowering, especially as a young girl growing up. It instills a lot of, motivation in yourself, empowering other women around you as well, and a lot of confidence coming into like a professional space. I think that's what like makes us really different from such a young age, is like we're ready to work and we know what it takes, right? Like we've seen it firsthand.
You've seen it for many years, actually.
Yeah.
So the consistency of what your mom's been able to do is astonishing. It's really something to value. And I'm glad you both appreciate that. I've met kids that have very successful parents and they just are not as focused or not as appreciative. I think it's very important that you guys never forget that, and I don't think you will, which is awesome. And I really am thankful that you guys came on. I don't know if your mom had a gun in her purse or something like this, holding you at gunpoint to do this, but
just a 5:15 wake up call.
Yeah, what my admin, or my EA, I should say, when she scheduled this meeting, she had to check with me twice. Like, hey, are you going to be there at 7? Because I'll be honest with you, I come in around 9, maybe 10 sometimes. Well, by the time I drop off the kids and this and that. So she had to check twice. And then your mom texted me 7 a.m., right? I was like, yes, Tracy, I know you like to wake up early. That's a very successful trait. All right. What inspired you? Your mom, earlier in the podcast, she brought up the fact that not everyone goes along with what their parents do or goes or follows into that business. What inspired you to follow your mom's footsteps, to be in the same business? And Whitney, I guess you could go first if you like.
Yeah, my mom told that story about us in Laguna, and I was listening into the deal, but I had a lot of resistance to it for a while. I was kind of like, I want to go try my own thing. I graduated right as COVID happened, so the job market was a little weird in its sense, but I made my way in tech sales and actually thoroughly enjoyed it. But I saw what she was doing, and the complexity and the dynamics that go along with it just really intrigued me, and I felt like a calling to like working with people, families, children within the families. And I also think you're not just selling a property, right? You're selling someone's home, and a home's always meant a lot to me, especially the ones that we've grown up in and the ones that I've seen my parents develop. So just kind of having that experience and exposure to it it felt like a no-brainer in the long run.
Thank you for sharing that. And what about you, Grace?
Yeah, I think like my mom said earlier as well, we both wear different hats. And I think growing up, I've always seen the visual changes that my mom makes in a house. I studied marketing in school and later went on to work for a marketing agency, and have had experience working for different real estate companies doing internships. And I think that my passion is kind of more on the branding side of our team. And I think that translates to the branding of each home, and watching, taking fixtures and wallpapers and redesigning a home before putting it on the market. That's something that I'm passionate about, and seeing how happy each seller is to watch their house kind of transform before it sells, and each buyer then watch that house turn into their own story is something that...
It sounds like you both truly appreciate also helping out the family. You mentioned something, how valuable it was for you to see your home, how much your mom cared for it, or a good home. To sell that to another family is actually a very important transaction. And it seems to me that you enjoy that aspect of it, to make sure that you take care of that individual, to know they did the right thing. People, I don't know on average, but I would imagine they live in 4 homes throughout the course of their life, maybe more, depending on your net worth or opportunities, money. But that's such an important aspect of someone, passing on their home or selling their home to someone else. It's just such a moment in time that they would remember, in my opinion. So that's great that you guys enjoy it. All right. What are some of the challenges with your mom's success? Like, there's Michael Jordan. You both know who that is, right? Your mom's kind of like the Michael Jordan of real estate. So...
Just not as tall.
Just not as tall. I would say she's better looking than Michael Jordan. even though a lot of people find him attractive, but she's definitely way more beautiful. She's definitely got more energy. And I've actually had a recent podcast where someone bought Michael Jordan's jersey for $600,000. I filmed 2 days ago or last week. And it's worth like $4 million. So maybe one day your mom's shoes are going to be worth like $1 million. So that might be something different. But what are some of the challenges? Michael Jordan's kids did not live up to his basketball dreams, and it has to do with athletics, obviously. But what are the challenges here, guys? And who wants to go first?
I mean, I think comparison is always hard, right? Like it's always something that will like live in the back of your head. But there's never been any pressure to achieve like her. We're both our own individuals. And I think that's been instilled in us since the beginning. But there is like that drive from it to, you know, perform well and do the things that, you know, others might not be able to do. But that's because we have a great support system and an amazing role model to learn from.
Yeah, I would say there might be more external challenges than there are internal, like whether it's from peers thinking that because we grew up in a real estate oriented family, that it's kind of the easy way out. But I think when you work with family, you actually have to prove yourself twice as much as you would with, you know, your everyday employer. So
very well put. The stress may come externally just from random people you talk to, but internally, you're really not competing with her. She's trying to make you better and is proud to see you grow. So she's got that support behind you. That's awesome. What is the best piece of advice your mom, Tracy, has given you in regards to real estate? Who wants to go first?
That's a really good question. For real estate, I think it's just listening and not being like quick to jump to an answer just because somebody wants an answer. You know, what we're doing is we need to be very thoughtful and precise. And she always says we're like wealth managers. So like we're dealing with people's biggest assets, and some of those are like on the extreme end, and like treating every single one the same with the exact same precision is very important to like earn trust and keep trust.
Got a more funnier question now, because those are. Oh, do you want to answer that one?
Mine
too?
was going to be trust.
Okay, trust.
Tap
Yeah.
into it at the end. Yeah.
Trust and honesty seems to be brought up a lot in this discussion, which is really, I guess, key to success long term. I think, and that's in any business. I think when you're dishonest with any client, you tend to fall into that trap. And your mom mentioned the trap. I think it was when she mentioned that in a tougher market, people start doing a little bit shadier things just to keep up. And if you could keep that trust and honesty going forward, you're going to be successful. But the funnier question would be, did you guys volunteer to come here or wake up at 5 a.m. and drive all the way down? Or was this her making you get up and forcing you by force?
I would say
a mixture.
Neither of the above, yeah.
Okay. You guys are playing it safe.
There's a rolling list of the plan for the day every day, and if it's on the list, we go. So
yeah,
you let mom lead.
Yeah,
very well. Okay, I thought you were excited to see my be on.
No,
the
that too.
No, we were excited.
I thought that the 7 a.m. was your idea and that you were on a tight schedule.
Oh.
We didn't know that she electedly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to wake up early today, but I appreciate that. I think I needed that awakening. Let's talk about your real estate careers. You both work for the agency, or does one of you work for the agency, or both of you?
Yeah, we're a team with the agency.
Okay, you are a team. Okay. Yeah. How has that been? How do you like it? Your mom mentioned it's very vibrant, and we could briefly go into it as well.
Yeah, I love the agency. We were with a different brokerage before, and this just feels modern, new, and exciting. Mm-hmm. A lot of younger agents around us, a lot of people with different ideas, also very experienced agents. So you get that mix of knowledge, which is extremely helpful. Our office is fun, especially in Aspen. It's kind of like the glitz and glam. There's people walking in and out from restaurants. But I've loved it, and it's a really exciting brand, and I think it's going to some exciting places.
That's very cool. Same?
Yeah, I would agree with all that.
Excellent. And where do you see your real estate careers going? Where do you want them to go? And you could go first, Grace.
Yeah, I see hopefully my mom not working this hard for the rest of her life, sleeping in until maybe 6, not 3.
Do you think that's possible?
I would hope so. And I see Whitney and I definitely carrying out her name and her business that she's built, and hopefully being a team together for as long as we can.
Wow.
Yeah. I piggyback off what she's saying. I feel like it's going to be a really exciting transformation. Like she said, we've seen our mom work hard for a long time, and I'm excited to see what we do for a while.
Her work ethic is amazing. I mean, again, she is the Michael Jordan of real estate, or if not Michael Jordan, maybe Scottie Pippen. I don't know who else out there to compare her to, but she's definitely going to sell her shoes for $1 million one day. Yeah. So I don't know who will buy it. They'll probably be on eBay. Is there a Netflix series or a podcast coming with you daughters? Because I think there's a Netflix with Mauricio's daughters now. So the McLaughlins, are we going to see this on Netflix one day or in real estate? Or
one can hope.
That's not in the goals.
I mean, I think a podcast could be really fun. We've talked a bit about the reality TV stuff, and there's a battle you have to choose.
Grace,
it's not my forte.
I gotcha.
There's a battle you have to pick,
could be.
Like privacy, integrity, and like, what are you really focused on? Are you focused on building a business? Or are you focused on a reality TV show, right?
Sure, focus.
Yeah.
I agree. That's one problem I have, is too many different things I want to do, and I'm good at a lot of things, but when you're not focused on one thing, something slips. So my advice would be do one thing well until you master it, and then if you have the time and you hire someone to replace you in that position, then you could focus on something else. But a podcast is fun. It's therapeutic. I think one day you girls will remember this moment. I personally will. I think your mom will. Mm-hmm. And I'm truly thankful for you guys to come on. Is there anything else you want to share about your mom, how nice she is on the weekends, on the weekdays? If she doesn't have her cup of coffee in the morning before we get off, now's the time to say it, because she gave you the microphone.
I think she's got a natural cup of coffee somewhere in there.
I've never seen someone with more energy in my life.
Yeah. But that's incredible. I think that's a positive trait, and God bless her. I hope she keeps it. Thank you, Whitney. Thank you, Grace, for
Simon.
coming on. I hope this was good. Was this your first podcast?
Yes,
it was.
Wow, I'll forever be remembered. This is a joy, and I hope I didn't disappoint. And sorry to put you through about 2 hours of waiting for us to finish. We did have good Wi-Fi in the building, but knowing me, I didn't give you the passcode, so hopefully your phone was working. And but thank you both. You were really kind. I'm really happy you guys were part of this. I think your mom will truly appreciate it in the future. And anytime you want to come back, or if you need any advice with a podcast, I'm probably not the guy to ask, but if you do ask, I'll help you out.
We'll be coming to you.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.